How do hormone imbalances affect mood, energy levels, and overall health?
Mood and energy levels are oftentimes one of the first things to be disrupted. So it's typically pretty easy to tell, especially in those perimenopausal women, which is going to be around the ages of 40s and 50s, depending on each person. But if they are having night sweats and their sleep is disturbed, if they are having hot flashes and any amount of fatigue is added onto that or any mood changes, that's going to be a huge disruption to their life. It doesn't take very long of bad sleep, to have your whole quality of life upended.
Does stress, sleep, and diet influence hormones?
Absolutely. I mean, I have a lot of women who come to me and they're like, I've usually been able to get off the weight that I want to and be at a healthy weight. I have doubled down on my dieting and on my exercise and nothing is happening. So yes, diet can affect it, but oftentimes it's that season of life and those changes come regardless of the food that you're eating, and we just kind of need to do a panel of lab work and see where we can improve those symptoms.
What does it mean to restructure or rebalance your hormones?
I always go back to the word homeostasis. We learned it in elementary school with science class, I'm sure, but just to get your body back to its best level of baseline. So, we want no issues with mood. We want best sleep possible. And we want good libido, good quality of life. We don't want joint pain. So, when those symptoms start to come up, that's kind of where we aim our focus. It's going to stick around or continually, progress and get worse unless we do something to balance them. If those hormones are back into homeostasis where we felt our best, maybe, early 20s, late teens, we'd be feeling great. You may not need an antidepressant any longer. We may be able to ditch some other prescription medications because when the hormones are optimized, the body is in its best form of harmony.
So, when, let's say, you're in that premenopausal age group as a woman, and now you want to find out if you really do have issues with your hormones. So, you're going to have symptoms come to you, and then what's the next step in figuring out, yes, I need replacement, or what your options are?
Absolutely. So when we visit with you during the consultation, we'd like to already have the lab panel drawn so that we can discuss that. There are two ways that we can, signify a deficit, either in your lab values or by reports of a symptom. So we look at your lab values, and then I give you a piece of paper that has you rate this list of symptoms: mild, moderate, severe, or none. And that's kind of how we gauge what kind of symptoms are they? Are they mood driven? Are they libido focused? Are they mainly sleep? Are they hot flashes and vaginal changes? So, depending on what systems of the body that you're feeling symptoms in or disruption, I start to get an idea, of where we might be dealing with some deficits. But ultimately, it comes from a combination of your lab work plus the symptoms that you report. And then we have a collaborative dosing website that we use that takes into some demographics, ethnicity, height, weight, activity level, and some lifestyle factors that all kind of go into the dosing and which of the three hormones, and or thyroid do we need to focus on.
So, to your point, too, I think it's important, like you mentioned, it's not just the lab values, but it's also the symptoms you're having.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times we go to a provider or someplace and we get our labs checked and we're told our labs are fine. So we're fine, even though we feel awful. So I
Yes.
think it's important to know too, when we do figure out dosing and whether or not replacement is necessary, it's also off of symptoms. Same way I would think too for dose adjustments, right?
Absolutely. It is a collaborative effort. I heard this phrase in training and I'll never forget it. Normal does not mean optimal. So if you have a set of lab values and the doctor's like, oh, well, this falls within the normal range, that's fine, but that's only part of the story. I'm going to keep changing up things and trying to, perfect our game plan until the symptoms go away. We're looking for symptom relief. So we'll kind of keep going at it and adjusting things back and forth until we get the relief of that symptom. The lab values are, of the region that we live in a fairly unhealthy country,
Mhm.
So they're
Yeah.
kind of just a standard that we go by, but it doesn't tell the whole story. We have to kind of dig into symptoms and when did they start, and how is this different from your normal baseline and why do we think things are off hormonally?
So then we get our labs back. We decide we're going to do treatment. What modalities or ways can we do treatment depending on the type of hormone that we're
Yeah.
replacing?
We have a couple different options. Currently, progesterone is only in a capsule form. I know there are studies that may have it in other forms in the future, but testosterone comes in the intramuscular injections in the pellet form that goes right under the skin, a small in office procedure. Or we have troches, or it's also kind of a lozenge. It sits in your cheek and it dissolves once a day. And we also have compounded creams. So you'll apply those to the skin once or twice a day. And we can do testosterone and combination estrogen creams. For estrogen, that can go, or estradiol, that can go in a pellet, or there's an oral tablet form, just no injectable form currently. So about 4 to 5 different methods for getting optimized. There are pros and cons to each of them. Like for example, the IM injections, you're going to have that onset of relief probably pretty soon. And then before the end of the week, you're kind of going to be coming on that downhill slope. That's why it's dosed once a week. Pellets, in contrast, maybe take 2 to 4 weeks to kind of feel that full level of effectiveness. But the main idea of the pellets is to kind of flatten that bell curve. So that increase is not as directly straight up. It's more angled, but then you flatten that bell curve and you have longer at that optimized treatment level. 3 to 5 months is what you can expect for symptom relief with the pellets. Now, once we check your labs, get something going, we will recheck at about 4 weeks after that just to see, have we gotten any rise in your serum lab levels and have we had any improvement with the symptoms? So then after that recheck, we won't check for another calendar year. So in between there, we can adjust the dose, but essentially based on your symptoms. If you are not getting symptom relief, we can adjust the dose or we can adjust the frequency, like the pellets. We may adjust how far apart you get your pellet treatments. So it's a very collaborative relationship. You tell me what's working well, and then we can make adjustments based on the symptoms as well.
When hormones don't typically just fall off, right? Like it takes our lives for that to really get to that place where it kind of slowly decreases and then we start to get these symptoms. So I think it's important too to remember that it takes that much time to get them back to optimal level, right? So we can't expect it to be overnight. Doing it quick and fast is going to give not great symptoms. You're going to feel terrible
Mhm.
because it does affect, mood, sleep, everything. So it's a slow process and not
Right.
everything works for the same person. So it
Yep.
may take different modality types
Yeah.
to try.
You may
So
have to switch it up, and that's not uncommon.
yeah,
We're just the aim of the game is symptom relief.
right.
So if we're not getting that, then we'll pivot to some other method and
Yeah.
give that a try.
And not an area you can compare to what somebody else is doing or what your friend does or what works right, just because it's going to be different
Yeah.
for everybody. So I think that patience with that is kind of key, even though
Yeah.
it's frustrating because you want it fixed now because you don't feel good. But
Yes.
the end game is where we're trying to get to. So
And I think that symptom checklist kind of is a good way to, I don't know, kind of gauge your expectations.
mhm.
They might be feeling a little bit better, but they don't really notice it. And then 6 weeks later, they're taking, that follow up checklist, and you do end up seeing like, oh, okay, well, some of these things, are
Mhm.
less severe. Like
Right.
we're not in the green or the optimal zone yet, but trending the right way. Yeah, we'll keep the game plan the same, and adjust the dosages for the most part.
Yeah. Agreed. Making hormone therapy available to people, I think, is a big area of need.
Mhm.
Where it's not overly expensive to be able to manage your hormones, especially because insurance, may only cover depending on where you're at age wise, or
Or what your
depending on
gender
certain
is.
symptoms, or what your gender is,
Right.
or what your ICD-10 code is, or whatever it is. And so it makes it more difficult. So we want it to be affordable. We want it based off of your symptoms. So it's for overall well-being, but then also offering telehealth consultations and options.
Mhm.
So things can be shipped right to your home. You can come in, you can do pellets.
Yeah.
So those therapies are also available, which, we like the therapy of pellets just because, like Lauren said, it doesn't peak and valley quite as much. But there's the option of having it sent to your home too. So that
Yep.
way it's just much more convenient for you. It's from a compound pharmacy that we trust. So we know what's being made, how it's being made, the modality, all of those things. Our pharmacist is available for us to consult directly with, which is the nice thing also because he's, across the street. And so any questions, concerns, issues, we always have that secondhand help there too with dosing and all sorts of things. So we're lucky to have that also. But I think just being able to have telemed consultations and things and not have to try to find time, to make it into clinic. We do use DLO pharmacies. So you can go, we can put it in, you can go anywhere,
Widely
anytime.
available.
Yep.
Yeah.
To be able to get it in most areas. Natural and synthetic hormones, a little bit different. Another reason why we really like to use pellets. So tell us more about how the pellets more reflect our body's natural hormone structure.
Absolutely. So it's important to us that we use bioidentical hormones. So essentially, that means the portion of the hormones that's the exact same as the way that our body made it. There are synthetic options of all of these out there. We just want to avoid those. You can't, avoid side effects, and you can't ensure proper treatment and symptom relief if you're using a synthetic hormone. So we strongly believe in the bioidentical version, and those bioidentical hormones are organ protective. It will protect the brain, it will protect the heart, it will protect the prostate and the breasts, whereas there's a lot of misinformation about hormones that can lead to cancer. And so we just want to clear up the misconception of synthetic versus bioidentical because it's hugely important, and I think led a lot of people astray, especially, some of our parents and grandparents
Hmm.
age
Yeah.
who decided against hormone therapy, because of some of those things that came out that weren't exactly true.
I think another good reason, like we had said, we do use another our compound pharmacy, a pharmacist that is local here who does bioidentical
Mhm.
replacement. So, which is why we like to use him, and that's where our hormones come from. So,